is the funeral over? You need to hurry back home. Today is Eliza's birthday party, so get ready. My mother-in-law, Lori, had the audacity to say this on the day I was saying goodbye to my daughter, Shel, who had passed away at just 5 years old. Lori hadn't even bothered to attend her own granddaughter's funeral. Instead, she wanted me to return for her sister-in-law's celebration. I was left in shock, grappling with a mix of anger and grief, and I picked up the phone to call someone. My name is Ree, I'm 33 and a housewife, and until recently, I had a lively 5-year-old daughter. My husband, Milo, who is 2 years older than me, and I met through a mutual friend. We married 6 years ago and welcomed our daughter, Shelley, soon after, at just 5 years old. She was a delightful child, full of life and joy, but fate had dealt her a cruel hand. Shel was fragile. 2 years ago, when she was 3, she began experiencing recurrent fevers and cold-like symptoms, accompanied by swelling in her neck. We initially thought it was mumps, but a visit to the hospital revealed the harsh truth. You need to get tested at a larger facility immediately, the doctor told me. After a series of tests and an agonizing wait, the diagnosis was delivered: malignant lymphoma, a form of childhood cancer. My world shattered as I pleaded, "This can't be right, please, tell me it's a mistake." Tears streamed down my face. Even with the doctor and nurses present, Shel needed immediate hospitalization. We returned home to gather her things, and I was unable to stop crying. Milo, his own eyes filled with tears, reassured me, "We need to stay strong. It's going to be okay. Shel will get better." His determination inspired me, even as we faced the daunting reality of her illness and the treatment ahead. I signed consent forms for blood transfusions and surgery, feeling the weight of despair. The treatments were grueling: 4 infusions, blood draws, transfusions, and chemotherapy. I left my part-time job to be by Shel's side in the hospital. Milo would take time off work to visit us, encouraging me to rest, saying, "You need to take care of yourself, too." When he visited Shel, I would catch up on chores at home or steal a few moments of sleep. In those first days at the hospital, Shel cried often, but gradually, she adapted to the routine. The nurses began to praise her resilience. She didn't cry at all during her injection today. I felt a glimmer of hope. Despite losing her hair and feeling weak from the treatment, she remained cheerful and eager to see us. She loved drawing, and one day, during our visit, she excitedly showed us a picture she'd made of Milo and me. "Shelley, this is beautiful," I exclaimed. Always chatty, Shel would keep us entertained in her hospital bed, giving us strength in return. When her white blood cell count dropped, she had to stay in a sterile room, but after about a month, her blood count improved enough for her to come home for a few days. "I want to go to preschool," she declared, and we visited her classmates for the first time in ages. Watching her play joyfully with her friends filled our hearts with happiness. When we returned home, my mother came to visit. "Shelley, you're doing so well," she said, cradling Shel in her arms. It felt surreal to see her so full of energy, as if she'd never been sick. "Mom, it smells like home," Shel exclaimed, burying her face in a towel blanket that had been drying for days. But just as quickly, she said, "Mom, my head hurts." Her expression turned vacant as she complained, "Let me check." "Oh no, you have a slight fever. Wait right here, I'll make you some soup." I tucked her into bed and rushed to finish the housework before starting on the soup. Just then, the doorbell rang. I glanced at the monitor and saw it was Lori. I regretted not ignoring it. "What brings you here, Lori?" I asked, forcing a smile. "Do I need a reason to visit my son's house?" She replied, her tone sharp. I wanted to tell her yes, but I kept my mouth shut. Normally, I would have welcomed a kind mother-in-law, but with Lori, that was the last thing I wanted. "What hobbies do you have? Harassing your daughter-in-law?" I imagined her retorting. Since our marriage began, Lori had continuously belittled me, insulting my lack of higher education, my height, and my looks. I was often astounded by her ability to come up with such hurtful remarks. My father-in-law, who passed away during our second year of marriage, had tried to mitigate her harshness, but after his death, the torment escalated. Left unchecked, she'd make petty demands, like ordering me to prepare steak for her or abruptly shutting off the hot water while I showered. Milo has an older sister, Eliza, a successful career woman, whose husband, my brother-in-law, is a prosecutor. Lori takes great pride in Eliza, often making snide comparisons between the two of us. Eliza has a second-grade son named Jace. During our Christmas visits, it became painfully clear how Lori favored Jace over Shelley, despite the fact that Shelley was her granddaughter. Did she really find Shelley less adorable just because she disapproved of me as her daughter-in-law? As I focused on making soup, Lori chimed in from the next room. "Yes, Shel has a fever," I replied tersely, thinking to myself that if she had no real reason to be here, she should just leave. But then she added, "Really? Such a frail child. I wonder who she takes after." "Certainly not our family. Your dad had cancer, right?" "Right, Lori." I've told you countless times that this illness is not hereditary. Yes, my dad passed away from cancer when I was in high school, but malignant lymphoma isn't hereditary except in certain virus-related cases. How many times must I explain the same thing? Is she losing her mind? In the end, Lori glanced at Shelley, spewed her venom, and then left. I couldn't help but wonder if she was starting to show signs of dementia. Afterward, I looked at Shelley's face, made a few sarcastic comments, and tried to shake off the encounter. What was Lori's purpose here? Was she just bored? Shelley spent a year alternating between living in the clean room and enjoying brief stints at home. After about a year and a half of treatment, her blood counts improved, and we finally brought her home. She returned to preschool, and we even took a family outing to the aquarium. I never lost faith that Shel would recover, but a year after her discharge, as she turned 5, my worst fears came crashing down, a relapse. The painful treatments resumed: spinal injections, radiation therapy, pneumonia bouts, and high fevers. I massaged her swollen face and legs, even undergoing a bone marrow transplant in the hopes it would be enough. Unfortunately, my white blood cells failed to engraft, and her condition worsened. The doctor's cruel words rang in my ears: "There's nothing more we can do." It meant that any further treatment would only add to Shelley's suffering. We made the heart-wrenching decision to bring her home, hoping to cherish our remaining time together. We devoted ourselves to fulfilling every one of Shelley's wishes. She participated in preschool sports day, and her radiant smile brought joy to her friends. My mom visited frequently. I had promised myself never to cry in front of Shelley, but sometimes the tears slipped through during those tender moments. "Mom, what's wrong? Do you have a headache?" she would ask, showing such concern despite her own pain. I prayed for this happiness to last forever, yearning for a miracle, but my prayers went unanswered. Though she looked healthy, her blood test results told a different story. Her condition steadily deteriorated, and she lost the ability to walk. Still, we held on to hope, believing that her 6th birthday was just around the corner. But Shelley's health took a rapid turn for the worse. Breathing became increasingly difficult for her. "Please prepare yourselves," the doctor said. I had resolved not to cry, but I couldn't contain my emotions. In that foggy state of mind, "I love you, Shelley," I whispered, my heart aching as she managed to reply, "I love you too." Despite the difficulty of speaking, she summoned all her strength to say those final words around 4 a.m. As dawn broke, desperate resuscitation efforts were made by the doctor. Milo and I took turns holding her in our arms, wishing for her to drift off to sleep in our embrace one last time. Shelley fought valiantly, but ultimately, she slipped away. "Shelley, please respond, open your eyes," I cried, feeling the warmth of her small hand quickly turn cold in mine. I barely had time to grieve as I was immediately swept up in the whirlwind of funeral arrangements. If I didn't keep myself busy, I felt I might lose my mind. Arriving at the funeral home, I was met with my mother-in-law's dismissive tone. "You're not coming?" she asked. "The living are more important than the dead. Eliza is coming back from abroad today. It's her birthday, and you need to pick up the cake." I felt dizzy from her insensitivity, struggling to contain my anger. "At least bring a present later. You'd better show up, or I won't forgive you." "As if you're in a position to forgive," I snapped, blocking Lori's number and reaching out to someone else. The funeral was well attended, filled with doctors, preschool friends, and my friends, all there to say their final goodbyes to Shelley. Their tears warmed my heart as we filled her coffin with her favorite sunflowers and letters from her friends. Milo stepped up admirably as the representative of the bereaved family. Hours later, we stood in front of Milo's parents' house. "Milo, help," Lori pleaded as we entered. Ignoring her, we walked into the living room, where Eliza's family and a few relatives had gathered, all glaring at Lori. Eliza was the first to speak. "I'm so sorry, we had no idea today was Shelley's funeral." After blocking Lori's call, I had reached out to Eliza. Despite the harassment from Lori and constant comparisons, I had developed a close bond with Eliza, like sisters. Being an only child, I cherished her as family. Eliza's son, Jace, often played with Shelley, and even during Shelley's illness, Eliza showed her concern through frequent visits. This year, though, Eliza had to travel abroad for work, and her return coinciding with her birthday happened to overlap with Shelley's funeral. We had asked Lori to communicate with her side of the family, but in her foolishness, she only informed them about Eliza's birthday party, failing to mention Shelley's funeral. Eliza, who I had updated, was horrified to learn that Lori hadn't attended the funeral. By the time Eliza returned home, the burial was already over, but they were waiting for us. Shelley was mourned by Eliza and the others amidst everyone's cold stares. Then Lori had the audacity to say, "You can always have another child." The words felt like a dagger to my heart. Just then, Eliza, fueled by a protective rage, hurled the birthday cake prepared for her at Lori's face. "Wash off that twisted personality of yours," she shouted. dragging Lori to the shower room and dousing her clothes in water. When asked why Lori had called, I explained how Lori was nagging me to hurry back for Eliza's birthday party preparations. The relatives looked on in shock and disgust. When Lori emerged from the shower room, drenched and humiliated, the disdain directed at her was palpable. But it's Eliza's birthday party. She's been away for so long. Shelley was sick anyway. She wasn't expected to live long. Eliza's birthday is more important. Lori's justification was met with anger. My birthday party? What nonsense. If Shelley meant so much to you, how could you ignore my grief over losing her? Why didn't you attend your granddaughter Shelley's funeral? Eliza confronted her furiously. Lori stammered, unable to form a coherent excuse. That's when Jace, her grandson, spoke softly. Grandma, you don't really love your grandchildren, do you? That's not true. I love you, Jace. You're healthy and Eliza's child, she retorted. What's that supposed to mean? So Shelley, my child, wasn't loved because she was ill? Milo's pent-up anger finally exploded. No, but Shelley was Michelle's child, so I kept my distance. She was always sick and in bed, not fun at all. So Jace, Eliza's healthy child, is loved, but my daughter Shelley isn't because she was frail? Have you lost your mind prioritizing Eliza's birthday over attending Shelley's funeral? These words came from Lori's brother, my uncle-in-law. His wife added, she's always been unstable. She harassed us when we got married and even tore my daughter's dress for her piano recital. No one stood by Lori as she became utterly diminished in front of us. We're leaving, Milo, Michelle. Let's talk again some other time. We exchanged heartfelt hugs with my uncle and aunt-in-law. We'll be going too, and let's be clear, Mom, we're cutting ties with you. Wait, Milo, I've always been yelled at by you. Who favored the successful? Is that why you didn't care for Shelley, my child? It's not like that, Milo. You know you didn't study properly like Eliza. You only care about those who do as you want, Milo replied sadly, while I handed Lori something beside him. It was a drawing of her made by Shelley, in which Lori was smiling. This, even though you never dote on Shelley, she admired you, Milo said, his voice thick with emotion. I hated you and never saw a smile from you, but maybe Shelley saw you smiling like this. Shelley was a pure and kind child. Even during her treatment, she worried more about me than herself. Perhaps in her eyes, you were a kind Lori. For the first time, tears streamed down Lori's face as she clutched the drawing, but it was too late for remorse. We're leaving too. I won't ever see Mom again, Eliza said firmly. Wait, don't leave, Lori pleaded, but we ignored her desperate words and walked out of the in-laws' house together. Later, my uncle-in-law's family came to visit us. They first expressed their apologies for Lori's behavior. After praying over Shelley's photo, they spoke lightly of Lori. She seemed remorseful holding Shelley's drawing, my aunt-in-law said, but the things she said and did can't be undone. As I mentioned before, Lori has always been troublesome. It's unlikely she'll change now. In the wake of this incident, many relatives decided to cut ties with Lori. Despite her unpopularity, I felt no sympathy. Her bizarre behavior over the years had made it natural for everyone to distance themselves from her. She might end up alone, dying in loneliness, but she'll have to live with her regrets, I thought. After the funeral, as the days rushed by and the procedures wrapped up, the weight of losing Shelley finally sank in. In my fog of grief, I worried Milo greatly, and my mother had to stay with us for a while. I felt like I was losing my sanity, overwhelmed by despair. I kept wondering if I could have saved her by taking her to the hospital sooner or if I had been more attentive to her health. I wished I could have done more, but I couldn't bring myself to end my own life. Shelley fought until the end, breathing in and out through her dazed consciousness, trying so hard to live. Gradually, I began to look forward again. I joined a support group for parents who had lost children to the same illness. Finding solace in sharing and crying together, connecting with Eliza and meeting with her became a source of relief. Milo and I decided to adopt a puppy. The friendly little creature greeted everyone on our walks, wagging its tail joyfully. It felt like a reincarnation of our bright child. Shelley, are you drawing in heaven, talking a lot, smiling? Someday I'll join you there. We'll meet again, so wait for me. But if a miracle happens, I want to see your smiling face once more. As Shelley's mother, I vow to live a life I won't be ashamed of.